working for the advancement of technology. Now it is hosting many conferences, journals, and we have a very strong IEEE Bangalore sections. And glad to have Bangalore section chair, Mr. Puneet Kumar Mishra, also with us this morning. I'm privileged to chair IEEE COMSOC chapter for year 2020, backed up by a very strong executive committee members. We have 24 members, each one of them diligently playing a very critical role. So thanks to all of them. And IEEE, yes, we really mean advancement of technologies. The beginning of this year, we had a face-to-face session on introduction to backscatter communication. But once COVID-19 hits us, we moved towards webinars and virtual workshops. And since then, we have done multiple sessions, series of 5G workshops. We did a week-long conferences throughout the evening, 7:30 to 9 for a week, where we discussed 5G with reference to IoT, with reference to blockchain, with reference to broadcast technologies. We had a special 3.5-hour program one time on AI and ML, how that is getting incorporated into 5G. We also had an SDN FVN, software-defined networking, functional and virtualizations in the network, how to define a configurable network. That also we had a special sessions. We have been working alongside other societies. Signal Processing Society, for example, we did a computer vision workshop. And on 1st of August, we are going to have a Wi-Fi special sessions that Dr. Ganeshan is organizing. So if you are IEEE member, you already know these. But if you are not, please join. I think this is half a year, so you could get 50% discount and join COMSOC, join IEEE, and participate in these things, learn from it. As you are learning in theory in your universities or otherwise, you can little bit mingle with the practices from the practitioners and I think enrich your knowledge. So this month we decided to have two different programs, little differently, and both first time. One on 25th July, we are going to do next Saturday morning, similarly, on patent creation, how to file your first patent. You publish your publications, paper that you write, but patent creation, how to write your first patent will be the theme and why it is important to do that. So please join again if you have time on the next Saturday morning. And today we have a special focus, nurturing career amidst these adversities during pandemic. And I'm again pleased to have initiated from COMSOC, but Bangalore section has joined. Young professionals is part of this organization. Also from Gurgaon, there is a society called Engineering Without Borders, Engineers Without Borders. They approached us. I have invited them to also join this session. So we are going to share some perspective, stories of how to deal with emotional distress, hands-on skills, how can you build during this time. And we have a special guest lecture, The Science Behind Emotions, by Dr. Uttara Vidyasagar. She's a medical doctor, as Dr. Naveen introduced, specialized in preventive medicine and community health. And we are very privileged to have her. And thanks to Uttaraji for agreeing to address our member community. So we will very soon start our program. But before that, I'd request Mr. Puneet Mishra, our chair, Bangalore section, to address the gathering with a few words. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Aloknath. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. So first of all, a very good morning to all of you. And thank you very much to the COMSOC team for inviting us, which is led by Dr. Alok. I'm also happy to see that Dr. Dilip, Dr. Naveen, Dr. Subhash, Dr. Subodh, they all all the luminaries and galaxy of speakers of ComSoc, they have joined. So they are really contributing very, very well. And ComSoc is known for having taking initiative which are path breaking and trend setting initiatives. Also, they are able to bring a lot of industry folks with IEEE. So as Dr. Alok Nath has already told about IEEE, I would just like to add few words on that. IEEE is the world's largest organization, as he rightly said, but just I wanted to give a context that our presence is on more than 160 plus countries. So when we tell that IEEE is a global organization, it is real global. We bring the expertise of not one or two nations, we bring the expertise of 160 plus nations. In IEEE, we are having 46 different verticals. ComSoc is one of them. And in Bangalore section, I am really happy to say proudly that out of those 46 vertical, we are having already 28 verticals present in the name in the form of society chapters. And Bangalore section is globally fifth largest section as on today. In Asia Pacific region, we are third, and our membership is close to 8,885 as on 31st December 2019. And this year, our mission is to make Bangalore section world's largest section. I hope with participation and activities like this, which Bangalore section as well as society chapters are doing, really we will be able to make it. So I invite all of you, those who are not members, please become IEEE member. And you see that most importantly, right now only 50% membership is going on. So you can just pay 2,900 rupees, feel the difference in next 6 months. If you are still not convinced that yes, IEEE is not able to provide any value addition to you, we are more than happy to say you, okay, please don't continue. But I'm sure if you join IEEE and really participate in all the technical seminars, webinars, conferences, what IEEE as well as Bangalore section as well as society chapters like ComSoc we are organizing, you will really feel technically enriched, and I'm sure that you are not going to leave us, you will be continuing with us. So this is very, very important time. With small contribution of 50% membership, you can avail another 6 months and know about IEEE. Now, coming to this initiative of nurturing career amidst adversities during pandemic, it is a very, very relevant topic, and I would like to congratulate the ComSoc team led by Dr. Alok that coming out with this very, very important topic. And I can see that speakers are really good. And most importantly, Dr. Uttara is with us, so she will be talking about uh, how pandemic COVID-19 is making a lot of changes in our lives, not it professionally, but personally as well. So I will be more than happy to hear all of you and would like to participate in throughout the session. Thank you very much. With this, I would hand over to our next speaker. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Puneet sir. Thank you very much. So we will go ahead, and I think myself and Dr. Alok, we have spoken a little bit. Maybe we can hand over to Dr. Dilip. Dr. Alok?
Yes, please. I will add at the end, but yes, please let him start.
Yeah, Dr. Dilip, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pretty difficult situation at this time for a lot of people, especially in my organization, in Reliance Geo Platforms. We have a lot of new engineers who had joined. The first thing that they had a problem with was food, because they'll probably rely on the cafeteria and to actually provide them with food while they would work, and suddenly they had to all learn cooking and things like that. And so, we had to arrange for emergency delivery of food for these kids and stuff like that, because it was somehow managed despite, lockdowns and all of that. the other thing is, they would all huddle together at the workplace to kind of discuss a problem to solve it, and suddenly they were all separated, all divorced from each other, it was like a bit of a shock as to how to continue working and things like that. So, but with all our video conferencing technologies, they have sort of figured it out. But yet, things like using a whiteboard was not really possible, and still we're still working together. Some of the new engineers didn't have that many friends as such, and some of them would just work in silos. And I have to encourage, as I talk to them, to kind of ask other people to bond with that person, and encourage them to just give a call and talk to them, and make them feel a part of the group. And also, one of the other things that we do in meetings is actually talk generally about life, about how things are going, and not just get into the technical meeting. At least the first 5-10 minutes, we always kind of try to see how people are doing, make them feel happy, because many of them are alone, in whichever room, place they're staying, renting, and things like that. And with lockdowns, they're not able to interact with people. And so, yeah, it's a hard time, but, I'm glad that Subhash and Dr. Uttara and all are doing such great work, helping everybody here. But, let's hope this thing turns around. Probably it'll take another year or so, but let's help them as much as we can. So thank you, everybody, for your role in this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dilip. Thank you very much. And I think I will take next for a couple of minutes to give some perspective around academic institution, what is happening. Okay, so I will share one slide in front of you, right? So I hope it is visible. So it is not unknown to us that what is the phase we are going on, right? How many difficulties we have, difficulties in the job and even in the personal life. Sometimes it has happened that we are departed from our family. So if I happen to go Europe and then I got stuck there, and maybe for a couple of months or more, I'm there and family is here, kids are somewhere else. So these situations are also there, right? However, we have to overcome somehow. So I will start with something. It says uncertainty is a natural and unavoidable part of life. So this is true, right? So we cannot avoid it. It is a part of life. And very little about our lives is constant or totally certain. And while we have control over many things, we cannot control everything that happened to us. So this is very true. However, we sometimes not try to overcome situation. We try to control the situations, but no, it is not always justifiable, and it does not work out well all the time. So I'll give, for example, what is happening in academic institutions, especially with the students and faculty. We have come to know the people are being laid off, even at the senior level. Those who have been working for many years, they have been laid off. They have been asked to go, and even the people, those who were working on contract basis, their contracts are not renewed. Those who are continuing, they are with half payment, they are with partial payment or salary, and if you raise your voice, you might be asked to go. So these are the situations even with the working people, and you can imagine what could be the situation with the students, especially those who are passing out and going to the next semester. So really, this is a very difficult time. So we are finding difficult to call the industry and organization for the campus, as that have been practiced for many years, but now very few they are turning up, they are coming. So this is a very bad time that we are passing through. However, we have to somehow manage it. So there are, I try to find out, go through lot of search and research and something. No doubt there are people, experts to us, and Uttara madam and even Subodh, who will be telling you in detail what can be done and what cannot be done. But I have listed few things based upon my experience and little bit of search and so on. I think we need to do something like that. So few tips that might help to us apart from managing stress and anxiety at this time. No, we have to focus on controlling those things that are under our control. For example, if jobs lost or income is reduced or income is lost, then we have to find some way, and we have to ensure that how much energy and where we should put our energy in order to compensate and get some good um, some good work, right? And in this situation, I think it is very important to network, to contact our society, to connect, to get connected all the lost contacts, right? So this is very important. And fortunately, we have time. You see, sometimes if I tell you in communication word, we used to say that multipath propagation is a difficult, and it creates a lot of problem. But we come up with the solutions of diversity and MIMO, so that wherever the energy goes, you can collect it. So this means that we can leverage the drawbacks that we have. So here also that situation is today. For example, lot of time we are saving not going to office, and especially in Bangalore, right? Average travel time is 6 to 8 kilometers, and you can imagine, even we are spending hours together to go and come back to from office to home. At least even this time we are today we have, so we can utilize effectively this time what we have. And most of the time even we are not going out unnecessary. So what I'm trying to say is we have lot of time, and how to encash this time is what we have to understand, right? So take some online course, and I strongly believe that we have to we have to do something, and we have to get a strong hold in at least one area, right? So the last point what here it is that we are trying to say is find your value. So where our interest is, in which area I'm good at, I have to make even that better, right? So this is the time that we can utilize and encash this time, rather than trying to express our angry, stress and anxiety over some other people or government or colleague or so on. So I summarize to say that please strengthen yourself and get connected to people, those who have not been in contact with you, and social networking and networks. So these are some of the useful tips that I would suggest. But the situations are, yes, situations are not that good, but still we have to maintain, we have to keep ourselves going in this situation as well, and we have to deal with it. With this, I thank you, and I will hand over to Dr. Alok for this session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Dilip and Dr. Naveen have very nicely explained what the issues are and how these universities.
Can I say, add something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, what Professor Naveen said is really good. I mean, I was faced with a situation with some engineers who are working with me, and they are asking, "Hey, can you give me more work?" Because all that they're doing is sitting in front of the computer, and they want to solve something else. And some of the suggestions that we've given them is like, maybe learn something else or find a new hobby, like Professor Naveen is saying, maybe also hone your skills in something that you like, and find ways to interact with family, even if you're remote and stuff like that. And right now, actually, most kids have tried to move back with their families wherever they are. But but it's an interesting time, and to at least develop skills and things like that, or find interesting, find other things in life that would be interesting, and not just be immersed in technology itself and things like that. So
Great.
Finding yourself. There's a chance to find ourselves at this time, right?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dilip and Naveen. You've explained very nicely what the adversities are and different tips to do it. Many points have come up, how people are staying in closed door, from health to cooking food to living alone and isolations. Who do they talk to? Sometimes their roommates have gone. How do you pay rent? Lots of different challenges that are there. And definitely in amidst all of these, we are talking about how do you nurture career. So when I listen to all of the points and also from my thoughts, if I try to put myself into these young communities' positions, not from our standpoint, but from your standpoint, where you stand, if you're in third year or fourth year or just graduated first year in the job, the challenges that are there. So let me put my thoughts into 5 key themes, that I would believe that is my tips, and hopefully it will help you. First of all, the mind, you read news, World Health Organization is saying something, government, the TV news, different channels, social media, the virus spreading, sometimes denial, sometimes panic. But I think the most important thing is to cool and calm your mind. What's happening is happening, but how do you get this each day, the difficulties that are there, our body and mind, can we be like, put them together? Mind must be our good ally. In the normal time itself, we see mind wandering. It is not always on our side. We doubt ourselves, self-confidence issues. But in this time, it will be even more because you don't have a reference point and it will start to wander. And the most important thing, it's a difficult exercise, but I would say that you must bring back mind to your side and not losing the mind to the COVID side or to the news side of the story. Normalize that. If you do that, you have lost a good, trustworthy ally, which is mind. So my first point is bring back mind to normal, cool and calm way. The second point, once it comes to normal, it's not enough because that doesn't nurture. That just makes the ground fertile to take it to the next step. The second point is, how do you make your mindset positive? You have to anchor. You have a lot of success stories in the past. Even if you have lost a job, even if you are not getting the internship in the place that you were hired for, but that's not your problem. This is a totality. And you have a lot of success stories of your past, and that has brought you to the present positions. You have defined some of your goals in life, and they don't change just because something else has disrupted. Yes, it is a disruption, but I think the most important thing to understand that we have goals, we have success stories, we have our networked friends, mentors, and please anchor to that and bring a positivity. Social media can give you a lot of news otherwise, but if you utilize it, connecting with people, talking to friends, There are many startups, entrepreneurs that are not able to wait through, but then many of them are getting funding even now. So it's a half empty, half full kind of situation. And I would suggest that find a way, once it has stabilized, to bring a positive outlook, associate yourself with the right set of people, choose them, and take their help. You're not alone. Share with them and take it forward. So that's my second point. The third thing I would like to say, that continuous learning, it is not just for young people now, for all of us, it's very, very absolutely necessary. Each day passes by and you need to continue to learn. And for young people, because the time passes, and with time, few things become obsolete. So therefore, it is absolutely imperative to continue to learn. And today we are very privileged. I think what one positive thing COVID has done has opened up online access to the world treasures, the webinars, the virtual forums, recorded materials. Many of them are free. Online courses, Coursera, edX, they have opened up many courses, even maybe for free. So I think through your organization, otherwise institutes, keep on learning. I had done some work on half-life period of the knowledge, or the learnings that we have, and that used to be 4 years to 2 years. It was 18 months. Now it's hovering around between 15 and 18 months. What it means is, it's like a radioactive element, decay curve. Many of you know that. In half of that time, like in 15 or 18 months, your knowledge relevancy, not the knowledge itself, but the relevancy is becoming half. And then, so if you spend 1.5 years, 1.5 years, 1.5 years, 1.5 years, in 8 years kind of span, or 6 years kind of span, possibly it is negligible level. So that was in the normal scenario, but even now I would think that it is more important. So my third point is to highlight that you need to continue to learn amidst these adversities, and time on your side. So please do that. That brings to my fourth point, which Dr. Dilip was just highlighting before my start, is doing, making, building hobbies. In India, we read from books a lot, the habit of doing things, making things. There are a lot of makeathon, hackathon, make a fair, there are a lot of events. And now maybe it is remote, but still we should participate in them, should keep our agile gray matter obviously working, but also hands to be used, minds to be used to be able to build something. Now, whether it is on the technical front or whether it is on some non-technical things, I took two things myself. One, little bit of gardening that I used to have in my childhood school level that we learned. During this time when even gardeners could not come, we tried to pick up a few things and grew some sunflowers and bougainvillea. So I cherished it during my work from home. Same thing, little bit of exercise, which I always thought, we'll do, and we were not getting time through travels and other things. But, I think this time has helped us to pick up a lot of yogas and exercises. So do whatever you like to do, but please pick up a few things and do, make, build, not just read, but combine with that the theory and the practice part of it. And that brings me to the last point that I wanted to highlight, which is about career. And this conversation is all about that, and we'll get to that. Recently, I did a webinar with some of the management institute on employability skills in this disrupted world. And we found out, how the verticals are changing from business angle. Now, as such, we talk about the demand supply. The students learn something, and we have to unlearn a few things and relearn some things when you join the organization, and then you take it up. So there is a supply-demand mismatch that used to happen. But maybe it is time, during this time, you can correct it, focus more, and you can pick up the threads. There are some sectors that are growing after even COVID time. There is telecom, there is health, pharma. There are few sectors that have been slowly coming back, or maybe not affected very significantly, whether it is FMCG and entertainment and some of the constructions. And then there are some things that are going to be taking a bit more time, by all assessment that people are doing, whether it is automotive sector or hospitality sector, aviation sectors. So depending on which year you are in, I think your strategy should be different. If you are just graduating, I would highlight that you should pick up things that are booming, even if it means the same AI ML skills that you studied in one field, but maybe you can pick it up in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, because you are in any case starting your career, and you can apply to that and pick up few things from there, because there are demand for those jobs. Whereas, if you are in second year, third year, by the time this COVID will pass by, some of these other segments will come up, whether the auto and hospitality. So it may be looking like down now, but actually the pharma and other things may be a bit more saturated by then. And therefore, if you're early on starting your engineering degrees, I would think that you must choose things that are now into dip mode, and probably they will come back into a high peak mode, and you would be better fit then. So again, you have to strategize, and it's a one-on-one discussion with your mentor that you must have with your professors. There is no general advice for it, but I'm hoping that you got the essence of it, how you can steer your career towards that. So with these 5 notes, how to make your mind neutral, cool, and calm. How do you bring positivity into your mindset and network with the right people? How do you continue to learn and have access to all these online streams? How do you build alongside learning? And the last is focus on what's going around in the world, the macro scenario, and depending on your status, your positions, you please choose and strategize how you want to build your career. So with that note, I will thanks again for listening and participating in this beautiful workshop. And with that, we will move on to the next step. And I believe Suvash is going to talk about stories. He's going to share some of the stories, how to deal with the emotional distress. So over to Dr. Naveen and Dr. Shubhas, please take it over. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alok. Thanks a lot for sharing and suggestions on the points that people are supposed to and people should try to do it. Then next we are coming to Suvas, who is a professional, not only technologist, but also he is consulting and doing a lot of work in this area. So I request and invite Suvas to take it and go ahead. Suvas, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen and Dr. Alok. And thanks for setting the stage. A lot of good words of wisdom that has come in. So in this session, I am going to really share my personal journey in the emotional health space. So you may have listened to me a couple of technical sessions in COMSOC that I have spoken earlier. This is quite new and very different initiative that we thought is an important aspect in this point. The reason being the pandemic is something that we have not seen in our life. And it is something quite different from the usual situation. So Dr. Dilip, Dr. Naveen, Dr. Alok, they talked about different perspectives on dealing with the current situation. One of the key points that Dr. Alok said I took note is cool your mind. So the key question is, how do you cool your mind? Mind is very chatty. It keeps on transitioning from one state to another. The question is, how do you bring it to the cool state given the events around us, right? So I will share some of those aspects that I learned, and I have been very fortunate that I got an opportunity to be associated with emotional health in my career. So, so when I was growing up in a small village, I always used to think, how could I really help people who are spending time in, I would say, not so productive activities. So I have seen in my village that uh, yes, people do study, but there are quite a few who waste time in playing wasteful activities like playing cards and not really focusing on studies. And it used to bug me for quite a bit. So in 2002, when I was working for Wipro, I still work for Wipro, there was an initiative called Mitra. That Mitra was about doing a counseling for the employees by the employees. And this initiative was one of its time from the corporate HRD. And we were very, very fortunate that we were trained by Dr. Uttara. So it's a very long story. We went through a grilling write-up process to say as to why we want to be a counselor as a Mitra volunteer. And out of 300 odd applications, some 20 odd people were shortlisted for the training. So I was one of the fortunate into this. So in this process, I actually will share about the workshop that Dr. Uttara conducted that transformed my perspective on what really counseling is and what really the help to people mean. I completely was taken aback that all my conceptions about helping people was wrong. So I will talk a little bit about that, right? So this unlearning has been very, very enriching. And in fact, in my real life, the way I was dealing with things, more than anybody else, I have been a great beneficiary of this experiential learning process. So really thanks to Uttara for teaching those life lessons that I'm going to share with you. One of the key aspects I learned is recognizing the emotions. So Dr. Alok said, cool your mind. So how do you cool your mind? Can we connect to what we are feeling? And can we accept that it is okay to feel this way? Some of the childhood lessons, you are a boy, you are not supposed to cry. You are making noise in a place where you should not be making. So we grow up with a lot of no, do not do this, do not do that. And when you feel something, do not feel this way. The question is, does it really help? Right? So this is the biggest lesson I learned, that it is okay to feel the way you are feeling. And I will talk a little bit about why we feel the way we feel, and Dr. Uttara will talk a little more about the science behind it. The one important aspect to know is that the emotions, psychology, they are not exact science. It is such complex science that we understand only a little bit of it. We are kind of reverse engineering a very, very complex area. I myself have no authority to claim that I know even little bit. I am what I have done is only the lay counseling through the training that I received in the process. So one of the first thing we are taught is, how do you recognize your emotion? So if I ask each one of you right now, how are you feeling? It may be very difficult for many of us to connect to the emotions and to be okay with the feelings that we are feeling. I may be feeling very sad at that point. I will be consoling myself and saying, no, I should not be feeling sad. Yeah, lockdown has happened. I am not able to go to office, but I am working. But sometime I may feel sad that, okay, I am not able to go there, go and do things the way I wanted to do. Is it okay to feel that? So it is important to accept, first recognize that this emotion I am going through, it is okay to go through it. And then once we have been able to accept it, we know what to do with it, right? So first step of cooling your mind really is able to recognize the emotion and then being okay with that emotion. Now, if you really look at the emotions, it's a very, very complex psychosomatic, I would say, or psychological expression of feeling. And there are many different ways to classify them. So I have picked up one of the classifications. So in this, there are 8 fundamental emotions that has been captured. And in fact, the total number of emotions are over 3,000. I am not a subject matter expert on that literature, but I did some quick reading. There are some 3,400 plus emotions that we can do. But they're roughly classified. There are different ways of classification. I have picked up on such thing. So if you look in this chart, you will find there are 4 positive emotions, and diagonally opposite are the absolute opposite of that. Joy, sadness, trust, disgust, fear, anger, surprise, anticipation. So these emotions are transitory in nature. There are events that cause an emotion, and that emotion persists for some time. But if it persists for a very, very long time, that is something that is worrisome. So one of the key learnings that I had is that emotional cloud is something that inhibits us from thinking rationally. The question is, how would you clear that emotion? I think some part of this is what we are going to talk about. And how do you help people clear the emotion? That is something that I will tell through some of my stories. Now, one of the key thing to understand is that emotional cloud is something like in a communication channel. Those of you who are electronics and communication engineers will know, in communication channel plays a very, very critical role. And the channel condition is one of the key parameters that decides what is going to be your throughput between transmitter and receiver. So if your mind is clouded, it is like your the thinking that has to create into an action that will make you better, that is getting an impediment because of the emotional cloud. Your rational thinking is not letting you think the way you could have otherwise, right? So this whole thing is about how do you really clear that. Now the key point is that there are times when you alone are not able to deal with it. So what happens is that if, let's say that something is sticking to your face, go to the mirror, look at it, and you can see what is sticking in your face. So many a time when you have somebody to talk to and you get a reflection of yourself after talking, you can find out your own way to take out that particular something that is sticking in your face. So this is one critical factor, that is when you talk to a counselor who listens to you without making any judgment about what you are saying and genuinely cares for you, listens with empathy, you really can deal with any issue. So the fundamental way we have been created by nature or God, whatever you call it, each one of us are capable to deal with our own affairs, provided the emotional clouds are cleared. So being in a sound state of mind, whatever it may mean, or you call it cooling your mind, that lets you rationally think and deal with your situation, right? So with that, one of the few lessons that I learned, I thought I will quickly share. So what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? So sympathy is something that if you see somebody fallen into the ditch, you also jump into the ditch and be in the same pitiable state that the other person is, right? That is your sympathy. That's all sympathy does. Empathy is something that you see somebody fallen into the ditch, you actually help him find his or her own way to come out of the ditch. So one option could be you ask, hey, how could I help you? So you may say that you tell me some way to come out of this ditch. So you may ask, if I throw a rope, can you climb it? So the response could be, no, I may not be able to, right? But then the question you can ask is, what is it that will help you? And then eventually you will be able to enable the person to take an action. It is just that certain source of information or the source of aiding kits that they may not be having access to, that will enable the person to come out of the situation, right? So this is one aspect I thought I will share. The other aspect we learned is expressing emotion does not make one weak. It is important to feel that I have the right to feel the way I am feeling, and it is absolutely okay. That expression may result into crying, expressing anger, and taking actions that may be coming out of it, but it is okay to let go. And once you are able to emote, then you basically will be able to see things in the right perspective. So for you to be able to express your emotion, the first step is that you should be permitting yourself to express those emotions. Many a time, the social conditioning prohibits us from expressing those emotions because society tells that I am not permitted to cry under certain conditions, right? So that is something that we need to be okay with us. And in this current situation, for example, many of us, if you are feeling sad, it is okay to feel sad. But what we need to be conscious of is that if sadness is leading to a what is called mood into a depression, that is something to be worried about. So it is important that you find somebody, a good friend perhaps, who will listen to you, who you can trust without any judgment. You could express your emotions, and that perhaps will help leading to a clearing of the emotions. So few definitions. Emotion is a short-lived feeling triggered by a stimulus. The mood is a state of mind that may persist over a longer period of time. And then there are certain personality traits or behavioral patterns that essentially is a longer thing that may persist or be your personality attribute. So there are different psychological classification of the people based on their personality trait or the behavioral pattern. So you may have heard of what is called the Myers-Briggs type identification, that essentially talks about the different kind of personality that you have. So I will try to connect that with some of the way we look into the finite state machine implementation. So if you really look at humans as a state machine, I am giving this example of a telephony system which is done as a state machine to make things a little simpler. So in a telephony system, look at the plain old telephony. Most of you perhaps have grown up with the mobile phone. If you pick up the handset, what is called it is going from on hook to off hook. So the initial stage was the phone was in the idle state. You pick up the phone and you then get a dial tone. Once you get a dial tone, you dial the digits, and then it starts dialing out, and the responding party picks up the call, and it gets into the connected state through a set of state transition. So this is a typical state machine. Many of you are familiar with this. It is simple to understand. So I thought I will give you this example. So in this implementation of a telephone instrument that is working in conjunction with a telephone exchange, it is essentially going through a set of states. An event is, an action is generating an event. The event is taking it to the next event, next state basis that the outcome from that event, right? Or that action is resulting into an event. Event will indicate a condition that will trigger the state transition. So any engineering system, you typically will be able to model it into a state machine of this nature. Now the key question is, if you go back to the previous one, if emotion is caused by a set of environmental conditions or the events, and they are very, very large in number, and your current condition, which is the mood that you are in, that is kind of a quasi state, I would say. You may be going through a set of very, very large number of state of mind, and that may become a very, very complex system. So modeling a system of that nature becomes very complicated. So just a simplistic, my way of thinking is, if you are in a particular state and you are into a particular personality that you are, it becomes very, very difficult to model the behavior of human mind under that kind of condition. That is my lay understanding, my own take from the lesson I have learned, but I thought I will just share with you. Now, one of the key things that happens is dealing with the loss. So if you look at anything that is happening around us, one of the key attributes is dealing with the loss. So loss could be that I had the freedom to go out. The pandemic doesn't allow me to go out the way I used to. I could socialize earlier, and today I'm not able to socialize. My schools and colleges are closed. I cannot attend to my classes. So these are the kind of losses. There could be great losses of bigger magnitude in terms of loss of life of some near and dear ones. So what happens, whatever may the intensity of the loss be, we go through what is called a loss cycle. So first is denial. No, this has not happened to me. And after some time, you get into angry state. Yeah, it has happened, but why did it happen? So then you start bargaining, saying that, no, this has happened, but now can this be taken back, right? And then that may lead to the depression, and then eventually comes to the acceptance. The problem is, many people always remain stuck into a particular state and never come out of it, right? So for example, if someone, a mother loses a son, it's a very, very grave loss for the mother. So some mother may get stuck into a denial for the entire life. Someone may get into the bargaining state, saying that, oh God, bring back my son, right? So depending on that, you may or may not be clearing your emotional cloud at all till the time you have come into an acceptance. So if you go back to your state machine, under that state of bargaining, any other stimulus or event that is occurring around it, you are not even registering. So for example, if somebody has lost a job, or somebody who had an offer from the campus is not available anymore, if you get into a depression state and you are saying that some injustice has happened to you, God has really created a situation that you do not deserve, it is a mix of denial state and then being in the depression as well. So what would happen is, you may not be seeing the brighter side of it. The opportunity Dr. Alok talked about is, it probably is an opportunity for you to learn. Perhaps there is something better awaiting you, and that is essentially the reason for you getting into this. So how do you really convert those kind of situations? That can happen only when the acceptance has happened, right? So it is very important for us to connect to the emotion, accept that it is okay to feel this way, and then find what is it that we could do, right? And this I experienced by sharing one of my great loss. I lost my brother into a road accident, and I didn't talk about it to anybody. This happened sometime in '94, and I am talking about 2002 when this workshop happened with Dr. Uttara. And when I talked about that sentiment, the entire event, I was crying. First time I cried after that event, and I didn't know it is okay to cry being a boy, and that was my social conditioning. And when I cried, and a room full of 20 people listened to me without making any comment other than having a empathy and concern that, oh, you're going through a grave loss, it felt a lot lighter. So when we really express our emotion, you really can accept it faster, and that grief cycle, acknowledging that grief cycle is okay, is very, very critical for us, right? So now let me share about two story of two counseling cases that I handled. I have handled, just to update you, when this COVID happened, under Dr. Uttara's leadership and under Viveka Trust, we launched a counseling initiative, online, kind of a online portal where people can come and register, and the registered callers would be dealt with. So this was not exactly a normal counseling. It was a, I would say, crisis counseling. It was a bit of directive and bit of non-directive counseling techniques to enable the people cope with it. So we ran this for 2 months during the lockdown between April and June. And there are a lot of interesting learning. But I am going to share with you two difficult cases, complicated cases. This first case that I am sharing with you, it was a counseling for over 1 year. And after that, the person felt all right. So you can see that some of these emotions that is bottled up for a very, very long time, it is not very easy to accept those emotions and then relook at your coping style. That essentially is not helping you. So this was a case that this person came saying that his personal life is very good. There is no issue at all, but I am having a problem in my workplace. And this problem is not with anybody else, but the way I am behaving, I am not able to accept my behavior. Right? So just to give you a little bit into it, of course, keeping it totally anonymous, the person was getting into very, very frequent personal conflict, showing his aggression whenever his views are not really respected. So the person is pretty successful in his career, technically very good, and he is doing his job perfectly. Nobody has any complaint about it. But when he is into meeting, he is either completely quiet till the time somebody has finished talking about it, and suddenly this person will go very, very aggressive, going completely opposite of what has been just said, completely negative. And at the end, he realizes that he is upsetting everybody, and he is not okay with that. That was his problem statement. Right? So the initial 3 months, it was more of a crisis management. How do we really handle that? He probably abused very, very abusive languages. Later on, he wants to go and say sorry, but he doesn't know how to go and say sorry, because he says, anyway, I have done the damage already. Why would the other person talk to me now? And so it was initially a symptomatic treatment to understand what is going on and how it could be dealt with. And we have been trying to understand by building the confidence with empathy and not making any judgment. And eventually, after 3 months, he was okay to share his personal life. And this is when it turned out that he had a situation of the child abuse. It was not a sexual abuse, but the power abuse. Okay, so long story short, this person grew up with a father having a second marriage. The first wife was dead, and he lost his mother when he was about 2 years old. So he doesn't even know when he lost his mother. So what happened is that he used to get scolding from the second mother, and he used to get totally silent and quiet in fear, and that continued for quite some time till about fifth standard. So you can imagine how long it went like that. And after fifth standard, his father realized that things are getting really complicated, sent him to hostel, and he grew up in this fashion, right? So the coping style, this is important, that when in this state machine, what happens is that you have a particular event taking place around it, and then from that event you transition to the next step by taking certain actions. So what used to happen is that he either becomes completely quiet, completely withdrawing, and then when he is not able to handle it anymore, he will burst out with screaming, howling, and then creating a scene out of that context. That has been his coping style to survive and the growing up years. So when he came to the job, his primary coping style has been either be aggressive or be completely passive. And when that coping style has been applied into the workplace, that was not working for him. So he recognized that this is not working for me, but he was not able to understand why he is not able to behave the way it is conducive to everybody. So it took me 6 months to help him understand that what he has gone through is really, really difficult time. It is absolutely okay for him to feel the way he has felt, and help him relieve his situation so that he can express and come to the acceptance stage. And he was not actually able to accept himself for his own behavior, and it took 6 long months before he could come up with the acceptance. The next 3-4 months, it was enabling him implement those change in the behavioral pattern. So behavioral pattern is basically is like a automatic stimulus response. Being a aggressive or passive has been is the primary style of coping, but how to be assertive while being very, very polite. It took a long time for him to be okay, till the time he continued coming once in a while to discuss, and then eventually he said that now I am fine, I can deal with my life. So that was one example. I feel happy about it, because though it took about 1.5 years, but he came to a state where he was able to accept that what has happened to him is not right, but it is about him, he feeling okay with it and moving on in life. And then changing the coping style that has worked in the childhood, which is not working anymore, make the adjustment so that we can deal with situation better, right? The second story is again a very interesting one. This was not very long. It was about 6 months counseling that I did. So this person comes and tells me, father is in a stage 4 cancer. I came to take advice as to how shall I deal with it. So two sessions, I used to take 1 session in a week. It comes out that is not the primary issue he came for. He actually has broken up with his girlfriend, which he is not able to accept. And that is bothering him more than that, and he is feeling bad that he is not able to take care of his father the way he should be taking care otherwise. So long story short, this person has gone through a multiple situation. Father is in stage 4 of cancer. The girlfriend has broken up. He has relocated to a new city, that is Bangalore. Joined a new job, taken a new home. And the moment he has relocated, his girlfriend actually wanted to paint his home. And because of this cancer situation, he is not able to let her do that. And as a result, she got very angry, and she broke up, right? And he doesn't know what to do. They are not in talking terms, and he just is not okay with it. So he wanted me to talk to his girlfriend and convince her to talk to him. So it took me about 2 months to help him understand what is happening around him. And of course, the only thing I did is listen with empathy and tell him it is okay to feel the way you are feeling. And he kept on sharing the stories, and then he got his own clarity. And then all I had to do is ask him, have you thought about how it will help if I talk to your girlfriend? Or do you think that it will be better that you empower yourself and talk to her? And eventually, after about 3 months, he gathered the courage and says that I think I am ready to go, talk to her, apologize to her, and explain my situation. He was not in a position even to explain his situation to her. So after about 6 months, the happy ending was that I got an invitation for their wedding, and that was very happy to note. Again, I will not spend too much time. So it is very important to connect with the emotions. I have put a emotional wheel. So some of these 8 emotions that I talked about, these are the basic emotions, and that intensity is varying, and a combination of these attributes, it is like RGB in the color. You can create an enormous hue of color. The emotions also can be created like that, right? So with that, I just wanted to conclude saying that it is okay to feel the emotion that you are going through. The coping style that you have grown up with may or may not work with that. It is important that you connect with the emotion, feel okay with it, accept what is going on, and choose a positive state of mind, like Dr. Alok had said, and then decide what is your next course of action. So with that, I will conclude my session, and I would thank you for this opportunity. And over to you, Dr. Navin.
Thank you, Suvas. Thank you very much. I think all of us we need to come to you. So it was really a great session. I think you are doing also, and these examples that you have explained to us. I think most of us gone through or going through such kinds of phases and so on. And yeah, really it requires. And
can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah. We are able to hear you, and we are coming back to you. Yeah, Naveen, coming back to you just in a minute.
I can.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I can be heard.
No. We are able to listen you. Just a minute.
Let me call her and tell that we are able to hear her. She is not able to hear, looks like.
She was saying that she is getting audio from you.
Uttara, are you able to hear us? Doesn't look like.
She is calling.
Yeah, she is calling me. Uttara, we are able to hear you, but looks like you are not able to hear us.
I'm not able to hear anyone, so
we are able to hear you very clearly.
Then I'll carry on. I'll just speak.
You can carry on. Yeah, just wait for a minute. Navin sir will prompt. Navin sir, you continue. You finish up, and then Dr. Uttara will start.
Yeah. So it real example. So thank you very much for this. And next is I would request Dr. Uttara to talk about the science of emotions or whatever she wants to say. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Uttara.
Thank you, Dr. Navin. Uttara, over to you. So you are audible in the session, and your slides also are up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm a little bit experiencing uncertainty because I am not able to hear my own voice. And so you may find a little bit of gap in what I'm saying, and things like that. So please just put up with the technology difficulty that I'm experiencing. So a lot has been said about how to manage these very same emotions that everybody was talking about: uncertainty, anxiety, the feeling that one is in a situation which they are unlikely to have faced before or unlikely to face again, and that this important events that are happening around us are not helping us to understand how we can cope. So these are just the basic things that people would be experiencing. And to understand this, I thought we would take a little time to pay attention to what happens and what is the science of emotion, right? So, so the next slide, Subhash, please, so that. Many of the earlier speakers have managed to give you a sense of what we do when things happen to us. So the way in which our mind works is we experience the environment around us, we make some sense of it, we think something about it. These thoughts give rise to emotions, and the thought and the emotion together make us behave in a particular way. Now, what is the science that has emerged from this? So, and this science of studying emotions, the brain, is very, very new. It's as late as 50 years ago, 70s to 80s. The tools of the study of the brain, that is all the neurological mechanisms, were first extended to the study of emotions. Before that, the orthodox thought, where people believed that cognition, reason, logic, these were all located in our highly evolved frontal and prefrontal cortex. That is the part of the brain that lies just behind your forehead. And that our emotions resided in something called the limbic system, which consists of many areas of the brain, which in humans is not much different from other animals. So what really happened was that neuroscience scientists studied all these higher executive functions of the brain and left the study of emotions to what was at that time called as pseudoscience, which was psychology. So there was this gap that existed in the way we thought of ourselves as human beings. So now that the entire process has started to look at what happens to our brains when we experience emotions, and particularly the frontal cortex, that is through neuroimaging, MRIs, and other methodologies, evidence has come out that emotional styles have patterns of activity throughout the brain. So it is not confined to a certain primitive, in a way, or animal brain part of us, but also other aspects or other parts of our brain are also involved. So if you go to the next slide. So that's what we mean by the science. We're now studying the brain as an organ and as a functioning organ, just like we would study other parts of the body. Otherwise, what psychiatrists and psychologists were doing, unfortunately, they were probably the only medical people who never looked at the organ which they were treating. Okay, so if you're a heart specialist, you're looking at the heart. If you're a gastroenterologist, you know, and you're looking and studying your entire gastrointestinal tract. Any other part of the body, you're an orthopedic guy, you're looking at the bone. But psychologists and psychiatrists had really very little access, except at the neuro level, that is emotion, cognition, reason, to the organ that they were treating. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, so Subhash has left the meeting. Guys, I'll have to wait till Subhash comes back. But going a little bit into therefore, we understand the science of it now. The scientific examination of this has begun, and there is a lot of studies now which connect our higher functions or supposed higher functions to our emotional selves. So what are these emotions? And I think a lot of our earlier speakers, Alok and definitely Subhash and Professor, I think Naveen, they all talked about how we experience at a feeling level what is happening to us. So we use these two words rather loosely together. One is feeling and the other is emotion. So I just want us to have a little bit better understanding of it. So feeling is only a psychological reaction to a stimulus, which you will all understand. So if you see somebody, starving on the road, looking really very poor, that stimulus can make you feel something, and that is the feeling. But when you start feeling your feelings in your body, so when you're going in a dark street and it's night and you're alone, you start to think, I'm scared. Then what happens then is your heart starts to beat faster, your mouth dries up, your pupils will dilate, you may start to sweat, you may start to have cramps in your stomach, you might feel nauseous. All these are body signs of fear. Similarly, if you're angry, you can see your jaw clenching. Sorry. The previous one, I just wanted to, I'm going a little bit backwards and forwards. So after this, the next slide, please. So basically what we're saying is that cognition and emotion are not so separate after all. And that human emotion has now got a very important place in neuroscience as much as thinking. So I've just covered that, but it's there in the slide. So the next one I was talking about was the emotion. So a feeling is a psychological response to a stimulus or stimuli, and an emotion, we say we have an emotion when we feel those feelings in our bodies as well. So please understand that sometimes you may not know what you're feeling. But if somebody asks you, how do you feel it in your body? Okay. So then what happens is that, sorry, one second. What happens then is you may be able to recognize it. So what we sometimes find in our counseling room, I ask somebody, so how did that affect you? How did it make you feel? And they go quiet because they don't know. Then we start to say, where do you feel it? And they say, oh, my throat gets choked up and I feel, as if I can't breathe. And then you can say, when else, what are the other situations in which you have felt this? So then they can then connect that feeling of fear with the actual bodily symptoms. Okay, so now how many emotions do we have? And I think Subhash covered that a lot. But if you look at Western psychologists, they really recognize 4 very, very basic emotions. And that are, as he was saying, 3 of them are negative and 1 of them is positive, which is happiness, fear, anger, and sadness. So if you look at that, you will know that we have a combination. And in our Indian culture, we look at about 9 of them, which we call bhavas. Okay, and we know them better because when these bhavas are expressed in dance and music, we call them rasas. So if you look it up as navarasa, you will know what are the feelings that as Indian thinking goes, they are identified. Okay, so now we're really looking at a new neuroscience, which is called affective neuroscience. Affect means emotion. So what we really know now is that brain circuits make experience of particular emotions more likely. So there are actually brain circuits which have now been identified. And because they make certain emotions likely, we can then understand them. So it's been shown that emotions can arise, at least partly, in the seat of reason, that is the prefrontal cortex. So just as an example, depression, which has been studied so extensively, started off by saying that when people feel sad, in other words, the emotion they experience gives them a lot of negativity. So they start looking at the world, looking at themselves, looking at their circumstances in a negative manner. So it was thought that depression, the origin of depression was in your emotional self and not in your thinking self. But when they actually started to look at the brain and look at the neuroscience of it, they realized that actually the thoughts come first. When you start to think negatively, and there are many ways in which we can think negatively, which we can look at a little bit later, then what happens is your emotion or your mood changes. So it opens up the possibility that if we think and we can re-dialogue, re-talk to ourselves and change the thoughts, we can actually deal with mild to moderate depression. So these are things that have come from the neuroscience. The other thing that has been really understood is that we all have emotional styles. And there is this very path-breaking work done by Richard Davidson, who's a professor of both psychology, psychiatry and neuroscience, who has said that there are 6 emotional styles. The first is resilience, which clearly is our ability to adapt and respond to the world around us. And this resilience is what I'm going to spend a little time on, because that's really what we are looking for when we are talking about coping with circumstances which are unusual, not easy to understand, uncertain, and things like that. So we look at resilience a little bit more carefully. But there are other, and these have all been picked up actually by all the previous speakers in some form or the other. The other one is outlook. What do we mean by an outlook style? These are people who are able to sustain a positive outlook on life in the long term. So please understand, what I'm really helping to talk about today in this talk is long-term ways in which we develop coping and emotional resilience and other aspects, not just coping with something that has just happened to me, which some of it was picked up earlier, how do I deal with loss and grief and all of that. But here I'm looking at much longer understanding. So outlook is people who consistently and are able to maintain a positive outlook on life. And that changes the quality of their engaging with the world. The next one is called social intuition. That these are people who are able to be sensitive to social cues. That is, they pick up very quickly in their social interactions of people's nonverbal cues. They're able to pick up their the messages which are not clearly being spoken, and this social intuition helps them to become very, very effective in their communication. Now, please understand, I know it may be difficult for all of you, but resilience, for instance, is seen to be in the amygdala, which is a part of the emotional brain. Outlook, social intuition is supposed to be in the hippocampus. So what I'm saying is that this has been understood now, that these things are located in these areas of the brain. The next one is self-awareness. That is, how do you yourself perceive yourself internally? That is, What in your own bodily cues can you pick up, not just bodily cues of the people around you, and facial expression and tone of voice and all of that, but your own, that is your own bodily cues. If you are aware, then you have a very strong way to understand yourself. So I'll give you an example of this self-awareness. I'm sure all of you have spent time studying, okay? You've read the one whole page, you've turned the page, you've read every word, you've read it all, and suddenly you say, I can't remember anything. I don't know what I read. So this is a lapse of our awareness. Now, so once you become aware that your awareness has lapsed, okay? So this is called meta-awareness. So once you have understood that, you can go back, refocus, and bring your brain back and get back to learning. So this self-awareness is also an emotional skill. It's an emotional style of functioning. The next very important one is our ability to be sensitive to context. Now, what do we mean by that really is, and of course, again, I want to say that this self-awareness is located in another part of the brain called insula, but don't worry. So what is sensitivity to context? That is, we must know that we change the way we behave depending on where we are. In other words, the boss who yells and screams at work goes back home and yells and screams at his kids is not sensitive to context, right? So if you are somebody who continuously you wear clothes which are inappropriate, somebody, or in the West, they say, you go to a funeral and then you are laughing and you're trying to be flirting with somebody. These are all lack of sensitivity to context. So that is again an emotional style which can interfere with the way in which you engage with the world. Finally, of course, attention, and I think again one of the speakers spoke about it. Are you scattered or are you focused? Because a lot of work has been done on what is known as the wandering mind. And a wandering mind is an unhappy mind because it doesn't allow you to do and this is in fact becoming quite a difficult thing in current days because we realize that distractibility has become very, very huge now. Children can hardly stay attentive for more than the time it takes to scroll. So this action has resulted in very limited attention spans, and therefore learning gets affected too, because unless you can focus and retain, you're not likely to be able to function effectively. So these are our emotional styles, and you can see that they can go from one end of the spectrum to the other. And if you all want to find out what is your emotional style and then work on it, then it's important. You can go Google Richard Davidson. You will find questionnaires. You can do your own testing, and you can see whether you're at the lower end of the spectrum or at the other end of the spectrum. So that you know, and please remember, we are not saying that you should be. We're not looking at extremes. We shouldn't be saying, oh, I'm super resilient or I'm zero resilient. No, we should be looking to be appropriate in our way in which we engage. Okay. So that is just to give you an idea about our styles, and then okay, so let's move on. Okay, so what does the resilient brain look like? Okay. It has the ability to bounce back from adversity. And we know that has actually nothing to do with the activity in the emotional centers of the brain. It is to do with your thinking brain. So what has been seen is that the more connections, in the brain, the connections are made by circuits that are called axons, and they constitute the white matter. The neurons are called the gray matter. Okay, so the neuron is the cell, and all the cells in the brain are connected and talking to each other. They're talking to each other by being in connection at a connecting point, which in the brain is called a synapse. And they're connected by neurotransmitters. So it's a chemical transmission. And therefore, what has been found very clearly that for people who are more resilient, that is, they are able to overcome the slings and arrows of ill fortune. They are the people who have a huge amount of axons that are going between their left prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. And that is something that is seen because they have formed connections and the amygdala is specialized in negative emotions such as distress, of anxiety, fear, and threat. So when the prefrontal cortex shows high activity and this circuit is well developed, there is a shortening of the activity of the amygdala. So what is the prefrontal cortex telling the amygdala? Calm down, and stop sending these messages. And then you can get over this feeling of being stuck. You know, I can't manage because I'm overwhelmed by the feelings of fear or anxiety or all these negative emotions. I can't think. And that is what was talked about by Subhash as the cloud. But really what we're saying is you can handle it. You can change it by developing your connections between your prefrontal cortex, which thinks, and that actually has a message which will go down to your amygdala. So the idea that you are at the mercy of your emotions is not borne out by science. So if we go to the next slide. So for instance, what happens, so now, therefore, what we are saying is, so people will say, oh my God, now I don't have those axons and I don't have those connections. So I am stuck and I have no other go. But that's not true because of another aspect of our brains, which is again coming out through science, which is known as neuroplasticity. Okay. So when anything is learned, anything at all, your brain changes. You must be aware of this. And so any new learning involves development of neurons and new connections. And new neurons are not necessarily born, very few, but the neuron itself develops and it forms new connections. And so basically a rewiring occurs. And you can see this in any number of situations where people have had brain surgery, they've had strokes, they can relearn. They can relearn language, they can relearn walking, they can all because the brain has the ability to take on different roles and make different connections. So if we can learn a new skill or nourish your emotions, and you continuously do it, you can refine and form new neural pathways. So what everybody was talking about, right? That is, to learn something different, take up a hobby, learn a language, learn new skills. All these are a result of our understanding of the neuroplasticity of the brain. And actually, if you think about it, this neuroplasticity is such that we are born with 86 billion neurons, okay? But with the way in which it gets more and more complex, neurons which are not used, like with muscles or with any other thing that we don't exercise, they atrophy, they die out. And therefore, by the time we are adults, they come down to much less. Okay. But we can do many more complex things, though we have less neurons. So if you're looking at the mind-boggling numbers, it's estimated that we have about 150 trillion synaptic connections in our brains. So you can imagine what we are capable of if we can train ourselves to have a healthy mind and to harness our neuroplasticity. And we have seen now that we can do this. How do we increase our mental activity and create new connections and make our axons connect with various other aspects or neurons in various other parts of our brain? We've seen that these mental activity practices, such as meditation, now cognitive behavior therapy, I referred to it earlier. So what happens in cognitive behavior therapy is that people this is used in depression and anxiety mostly because of the negative thoughts. So what people are asked to do is to address negative thoughts. What are these negative thoughts likely to be? So it's also a way of saying, looking at helping people to be more optimistic rather than more pessimistic. So another way of looking at this is, again, it's another, just rephrasing it by different psychologists. So Martin Seligman, who studied happiness, says, look at it as an optimistic and a pessimistic view rather than in some other manner. So it's just the same thing, but it helps you to understand that if you can change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. It's as simple as that. So it's cognitive, that is your thinking and your behavior. So what people are asked to do constantly when they are depressed is because they continuously have what are known as automatic negative thoughts. So these thoughts are, they believe that things are permanent. One of our negative thoughts is, this is happening now, it's going to happen forever. So the effect, so we have to tell ourselves constantly that the effect of bad events is temporary. Okay. So if we hear ourselves using language which is generalizing, so suppose you are waiting for your friend to pick you up you said, we'll meet at 7 o'clock. We can't say that nowadays, but I'll meet you at 7 o'clock outside the movie theater. And the person doesn't come. Then when you meet them, you say, you're always late. You always treat me so badly. And you always disrespect me. So these are effects of thinking in a way that or it never happens. I'm sure have heard, if you heard reason to be with people who fight a lot, they'll say, you never do this, or you always do that. So if you hear that, you start to change the way you think. You say, no, it's not always never, it's not always, it happens sometimes. You can start to change the way you experience it. So in other words, one is, it's not permanent. You have to start to say the effect of bad events is temporary. Second is what we call as pervasiveness. So what we think is that if I have a setback in this area, we let it affect all the other areas of our life. So we can see no benefits if you put it to the COVID situation, we feel that because I am working from home and I am constrained in my movement and mobility, then nothing is going right in my life. So everything else is affected. Now my children are getting on my nerves, my boss is getting on my nerves, my ability to just sit back and enjoy the view outside my window, I cannot do. So there is a pervasiveness. So we help people to change the way they think and not let these setbacks, and if we have to do it consciously, this is the point of harnessing neuroplasticity. We have to keep doing it. And then we will realize that our connections improve and we don't have to do it later again and again. So one of the things that I want to also emphasize, the brain is a very lazy organ. Once it develops patterns, it repeats those patterns again and again. So these styles, if you go towards a more positive style, it will become part of you. And it will do it automatically after a while. Now, if you want to change that, you have to work very hard. So when you do this, you have to continuously, in a way, repeat it. So we have to do these practices. So whether it's yoga and meditation, or it is cognitive behavior therapy, or it is well-being therapy, or mindfulness therapy, all these are to be done consistently and over a period of time for it to get embedded. So there's one experiment which is really one of my favorites, done by a professor in Harvard, where he asked people to practice anytime during the day, not really, but to imagine. Imagine, he taught them a 5-finger exercise of a piano, okay? And they had to just imagine it. They didn't actually sit at a piano and do it, okay? They imagined this exercise over a period of time. And within 7 to 10 days, the area of the brain, which is in your frontal cortex, showed an increase in that particular, which represents your fingers. Okay, so you can see that it doesn't, but it may not last for very long if you stop. But the change in our brain happens quite quickly and noticeably. So in other words, the person actually hasn't practiced, okay? But even imagining that you practiced can make a change in your mind. So that's why these things work. You start to think it, and that thinking creates connections. And these connections by repetition will become permanent. For instance, we all know that once you learn to ride a bicycle, you don't forget it, because you've done it so much that your brain just plugs it in. And so these are the things that we can train ourselves to have a healthy mind and to harness neuroplasticity. Okay. So once again, I think I just wanted to pick on one of the things that Dr. Alok said, which is about learning. Okay. So psychologists talk about 2 types of learning. One is called a declarative form of learning. Okay. Now, declarative form of learning is, if I want to be an honest person, I read about honesty. But this won't make me an honest person. Or if I want to be a kind and compassionate person, I go on reading. I read Dalai Lama, and I read lots of people, and I read lots of spiritual people, and I think I will become, but that won't make us. So this declarative type of learning is not going to help us become that. So we need another type of learning if we want to actually do something that makes us behave in a particular way. And that is called a procedural form of learning. And the circuits in our brain are quite different for these 2 types of learning. Okay, so when we're talking about procedural learning, you actually have to do. And I think that was also brought out, that don't just read, do. So when you do, you're doing procedural learning. When you experience and you understand that in yourself, in your own being, then you will have procedural learning, and you can actually practice that. So in our understanding of ourselves, there's no point in continuously learning or reading and thing, because that is a different form of information or knowledge, not necessarily can be practiced. So so please understand that and these have two separate circuits in the brain. That's the important thing I wanted to bring out as part of science of ourselves. Okay, I think I should, I don't know if I have any more time, or how do we do? Anyway, so just the last thing is, so this healthy mind thing I was telling you. So all our mental practices are directed towards this. That is developing a positive and optimistic view of life and image of the future. And we have to do it consistently. Now, in that, I think I've already picked this up, the thought awareness. I talked about permanence and pervasiveness. The third one is personalization. That is, we think all these things are happening only to us. Okay. And therefore, we feel very, very, in a way, victimized. So what happens then is, for instance, I remember talking to somebody who had come back from abroad, and he was being gypped by auto drivers left, right, and center, because he was clearly an NRI. And he kept personalizing it. Why are they doing it to me? Do they not see that I'm an Indian? I'm not a foreigner, and all of that. And then somewhere it by asking him to examine it further and all of that, it came to him that auto drivers behave like this all the time. They are not. It's not personal. They're not doing it to you alone. So when we personalize, we find it difficult to come out of that situation, because we put ourselves into we don't look at the whole picture. So what we say, suppose your boss says, oh, you did a bad job, you don't look at it as I didn't get sufficient help, or I was distracted on all that. You tell yourself, I messed up because I'm not good at what I do. I'm poor at my job. So when you personalize it in that negative way, then you can't move forward. The other is to have insight. It's very important for us when we go through something negative to change our relationship to the narrative. So I think Subhash gave his personal experience of that the narrative doesn't change. The fact that what happened to you doesn't change, but we change the way we relate to that narrative. And that is another mental practice that we have to work on to get to a healthy mind. The other one is, again, been mentioned by everybody, that we make connections and we take support and we develop harmonious relationships, because these relationships encourage and enrich us in many, many ways. So these nurturing harmonious relationships are critical to our well-being, and we must encourage our harmonious relationships and stay from our negative relationships. Okay. And finally, purpose and meaning, which I think again has been touched on. It's really important that we align all our acts to the purpose or goal or meaning that we have for ourselves and our life. So once we do that, all these mental practices become easier, because we're directing it towards a purpose or a meaning. And these are ways in which the science and the practice can come together. Okay, so I'd like to end with one small exercise. So what I'd like you to do is follow me. Just please put down your pens or your devices or whatever you're doing, and if you can just close your eyes for a minute. It's just for a minute. So just close your eyes for a minute and think of, or bring into your mind and into your heart a loved one. So bring into your mind and into your heart a loved person, a person you love a lot. And then say, I mean, sorry, first think that that this person should be happy and free from suffering. Okay. Now, in your mind, say it, not loudly, but say it also. May you be happy and free from suffering. Now you can open your eyes and just think how it has made you feel. Just think about that and think that if we can do many of these things on a regular basis, actually we need to do things like this, not more than three minutes at a time, sometime during the day, just practice this type of work on your mental practices. Once you can do that, right, you'll see yourself changing, not because something has changed in your environment, because neurons in your brain are thinking differently and communicating differently, and you're forming different connections. Thank you.
Oh, that's great, madam. Thank you very much. So I think we have lot of learning and lot of things to learn other than our technology and so on. So a great feeling that we have generated among ourselves and within ourselves. But still, I think you have very rightly and correctly pointed out that the way we think, and we keep our positive energy and thought, that plays a very important role in our life. So with this note, I thank you on behalf of our organizers and colleagues. Thank you very much for this enlightening talk. And please stay with us, maybe. And then we have next our Subodh. So he will be talking about some other stuff, how and what are the opportunity and so on. So I hand over to Subodh from Cisco. So over to you, Subodh. Thank you.
Sure, Naveenji. Thank you so much. And what a mesmerizing talk, Dr. Uttara, if I may say. All of you, each one of you, and especially you, has laid this path for me. I cannot thank you enough. I was transfixed. It was very engrossing. And if I may say so, it made me feel very free and nice. Okay. Naveenji, how do I share? I just have a few slides as pointers. Can I start sharing? Do I have the rights?
Yes, Subodh, you should be able to share.
Okay.
But I think the screen that is being live cast has to change. So I can't probably take the presentation. I'm seeing a different agenda slide into the stream. So that is something you probably will have to change.
Yeah, let me know once you start seeing a PowerPoint. Are you seeing that now? A welcome sign?
It is there, yeah.
Okay. All right. So to all my friends and guest, Dr. Uttara, thank you so much. I think Dr. Alok, Dilip, Naveenji, Subhash, and finally Dr. Uttara, all of you have laid this stage. And I think everyone who's on this call must be really, really engrossed, mesmerized into how much wealth of information has gone. Not just information, but I would say some very meaningful nuggets of insights have come for each of the students who are listening. My job is just to translate that and be a conduit. I'm just a humble conduit for what's next, for them to own their career really with this clear, open mindset. What do you do with this mindset once you start developing this? So as you thought, Dr. Uttara, the distinction between declarative and procedural, and while that gives you an open and growth mindset, how do you now navigate your career in this COVID times? And the art of listening, as Alok said, Dilip talked about empathy is so important because nothing Not even a stone moves without that if you don't have that mindset. And that is the first step. So my humble plea to everyone is I'm assuming your mindset is already there now. And with that open mindset and that shift inside, if your frame has shifted, because as Dr. Uttara rightly said, right, it's all really here in the mind. The scarcity is one thing, but the scarcity mindset is the detrimental part, which we are all collectively as a team here encouraging all of your students to drop and cultivate an open or a growth mindset. So my job is just to, I'm just using this word as a placeholder as innovation, but this doesn't really mean just research or something. This can be innovation of your mindset, of your growth mindset from just plain declarative, which means I want to, I would like to really a procedural, translating from being to doing. And different things can come to your mind. As students, as someone who's aspiring to do something, as someone who is in some part of the journey, we are all conduits. We are all, in a way, at different stages of your careers. If we are here on this call, thanks to Naveen talking about or sharing about our insights, it simply means I have walked the path a few years before each one of you, and I'm just sharing. It would never land upon your mindset that you have to follow the same thing, because that would just be cloning what I felt or experienced. I would expect you, with the new mindset now you're created, thanks to all the brilliant talks before, to innovate and to build and move away from this closed scarcity mindset to an open growth mindset. So in that context, I promise you that this session will really set the context for innovating for your career, innovating even for that little idea you may have. Just here, just right maybe up till here, but are afraid to express or ask, and not very sure if it's relevant in this times. And third is then really owning your career. So that is the three promises I intend to translate through this little talk of mine. And Naveenji, please let me know when I need to stop. I've timed this for 25 minutes, but if I need to stop earlier, I'm happy to stop and we can collectively take questions if feel so.
Please continue. You have time, enough time.
All right. So again, if everything had to be summarized based on my previous speakers' talks, I would say you would always realize that the scarcity approach, right? The scarcity mindset means, oh, jobs are going to be less. Oh, only AI. I'm just using some technology placeholders. Only if I know AI or blockchain will I survive in this industry. Um, Only if I do this, only if I do this, right? And that is a scarcity mindset. And that is your comfort zone, by the way. And if I may say so, with the tools, the techniques, and the heuristics now shared in all the 5 previous talks, you will now realize that the magic really happens outside your comfort zone. And your journey is to always point and make sure your new connections, the white and the gray matter, are built towards outside your comfort zone, right? So while you amass data and knowledge, the most important thing is what do you do with the data knowledge and translate that to wisdom to forward your career, you forward maybe your startup, or even make an impact in the industry. So just a point of thought, as you do this, you'll always realize that there are natural gravitation cycles in the industry. People don't always follow a leader blindly. I'm just using the phrase here called a technical leader, right? Because my assumption rests pretty much on IEEE here, but it could be any leader. Okay, so technology is just a construct here. It could be a societal leader, it could be a political leader, it could even be an environmental leader. But people follow the leader. And that is also, if I may say so, a bonus mindset which you get once you learn to look at your mind, change from again this scarcity or limited mindset to a new framework of what is now possible, what can I now really bring into this new mindset I cultivate. You'll often associate a light bulb, okay, and I'll tell a few stories on that later as well as we continue. But people often mistaken that things will change overnight. I'll probably sit in a quiet corner in my room or below a coconut tree or on a hilltop. Some divine intervention will happen. Some million neurons will shift. Some dendrites will make some new connections, and I'll get a flash of an idea. Nothing is further from the truth. Okay. While light bulbs suggest, like the binary thing, like you press a button and electricity flows through the tungsten filament, ideas are not that. They are a function of, different things, different experiences you have evolved, different things you have tried out. So that's why the idea of light bulbs really, apart from the symbolic notation, in my humble opinion, is wrong at many levels. Because innovation at your mindset level is much more than just, I'll sit today, oh, I'll be the most hardworking person, or I'll be the most research oriented person. Does not work, because, again, as we learned, that is just declaring to yourself. You have to translate that to actions. So your innovation or your growth mindset is much, much more than just an idea. And that is what it means, really. If you are to break it down into a simple mathematical or a placeholder in your mind, I would say your actions matter a more. Every single thing which you do in line with your original thought, intent, or process, or whatever you call it, will lead you to that innovation mindset. And that will also, in many ways, free or liberate you. And of course, if you're not making mistakes, then you're not innovating, and we'll come to that as well. But let me give you a few seconds to think over this. And people will always talk about, no, you have to be innovative, you have to ideate, ideation, and you'll hear all these words. Again, I think, like the symbol of a light bulb, they are slightly overrated. More than ideation, I think the perspiration for your idea, or the perspiration for your mindset, matters more. So ideation is just probably 0.5 or less than 1%. The 99% or the 99.5% would be, how much are you willing to perspire the action part for intent. And that's where the procedural part comes in, as we learned. Okay. Your shift in mindset, your shift in reference, your shift in, oh, because it's COVID, everything will be this, this jobs will go away. Uh, it always happens at intersections. There's always something which changes the flux, something which changes the pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. And then you think, oh my God, the puzzle is destroyed. Whereas all you need to do is just move the mosaic tiles in a different way, and a new puzzle emerges. So always remember, there is always, always, and always that change, that flux mindset, which will help you. So that's why innovation happens really at intersections. There has to be certain shift. There has to be certain different things you start saying. People will call it different names, right? From attitude to perspectives to mindset or habits, irrespective of what you choose to call them. Please realize that they will change, and you'll always get this thing that, hey, what's your mindset about, my friend? If you're someone, he or she, a college student, you'll have your professors or faculty tell you, think like the industry, and own it, really. So I'll leave you with this little case study of an example. There is no product company which is not thinking about services. The day they design the first light bulb, you have to think about services. When you start thinking about things or business models, again, I'm just taking a premise, whether you want to be a startup owner, or you want to invent the next cool protocol for whatever technology you like, or you want to just be someone who wants to perceive and research to the greatest possible extent. But you have to think like the industry, which means think beyond just your mind, and look out and see what has made, for example, the post-it such a success. What has made the present mobile phone a success? Just giving a premise. Look closer. What has made India Stack, right? It is now considered the world's biggest startup ecosystem, on which we have our identity via Aadhaar, we have our payment gateway via UPI, BEAM, BBPS, and then we have the consent-based layer, which is all going to be blockchain and all the cool technologies you can think of. And that's going to be on flow-based lending or account aggregation. So for the first time, we may not be the superpower, but we'll be the world's first data-rich economy, right? Now, this mindset change uh, really came because we never went on the same path as the Google or the Amazons to, to take people's data or browsing patterns and sell them something via browsers or induction habits, right? So the model of India said is, if you are leaving a digital footprint, you own that data. And that's why I'm just being a little India innovation centric here. But if you're someone who wants to innovate in this space, you need to look at India stack very closely. And the best way is to start now. If you have not heard about it, I will not spoil the surprise. Go and dig in. Go and find why the world's biggest identity system is completely on the cloud. It is now ready for blockchain. Go and find why the world's biggest digital payment gateway, BEAM or UPI as we know it, is now clocking close to 1 billion transaction per day. Okay, just giving you that mindset. So that is what they thought about. And well, to be honest with you, if I may say so, it was never meant for people like you and me, right? Aadhar was really meant about people who don't have an identity, who get government friction when they apply for a 1,000 rupees loan, who can't get admission in school because they don't have an identity, right? And that is why it scales so well. So I'm giving you that example that we look at an Aadhaar card, but you have to start looking at the services which you get to it. Okay, so start thinking like that industry. For example, are you looking at a highway, or are you looking at a bridge, or are you looking at a railway, or are you looking at a seaport or an airport? That's the perspective you have. In my humble opinion, whether or not you are a student of any faculty, arts, humanities, engineering, science, political science, you have perspectives. Okay, you either can use it or you can lose it. It's as simple as that. And you have to respect that everyone has a perspective, and we are an infinitesimally long chain of human perspectives and possibilities in this. Okay. Assuming the mindset is in place, and you are quite close to touching and feeling your idea, right? The first perspective is, are you focusing on solving the right problem? Are you taking something? Do you have an idea which is, I'm just using the right word here, but which is just what is already existing out there? So, are you focusing on the right problem? Is what I will leave you with. And one of the most uh, brilliant problem here is, we always had cars, for example, right? We always had internet. We always had customers wanting to sit in cars. What Ola or Uber did is just bridged everything together, right? And that's why um, just maybe 6 years later, after it was launched, just from 3.5 lakh Indian rupees, Uber becomes the world's whatever model you may call it, and people still give and are not tired of giving those examples, that they wanted to solve a fundamental problem of scarcity of taxis and cabs and abundance, really, thanks to the internet. And then you just bridge all them together. Just expand that a bit further, you'll probably notice so many case studies aligning to it. For example, platform-based approaches which Google uses or Facebook uses. I'm using tech examples, but I would also like you guys to broaden your minds and think about uh, uh, solar panel or technology examples, because some of the most brilliant innovation is happening in those streams. People, especially from uh, the chemical or the metallurgy world, start looking at nickel, cadmium, or lithium ion, which was hitherto considered like scarce elements, are now looked upon as the future elements. And there are so many colleges in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh now, students who are now pursuing very focused, laser focused research to make sure we get to be the solar superpower of the world. So that's a great stream by itself if you can link the dots. Okay. Simplification. I think the point I'm trying to illustrate is, again, in this unnecessary gadget filled world, we just keep adding on the left hand side, right? You might notice there is a remote for maybe, I'm just giving an example, maybe your video recorder, for your television, for your radio, for your whatever, curtains, for your audio server and something, until someone comes and says, here's a remote, universal remote, and I'm simplifying all the gadgets on one, right? You want to think about broadening this perspective, your present any degree phone, feature or smartphone has probably disrupted more than 50 devices. So focus on simplification. If this simplifies and obviates the need for me to innovate and not carry a camera, not carry a computer, not carry a text pad, not carry so many other things, maybe a thermometer, maybe a pedometer. So the simplification factor also matters a lot. I like this slide simply because this goes very closely to the mindset. Okay, for some of you folks who watch movies, sometimes you just have to come in from the top and start thinking, or you have to solve that problem. If this person, if this rat has to get the cheese without getting hooked in that, that rat trap, you just have to focus from the top, then walking from the side. Okay, and that's what you notice. This is a classic take on Mission Impossible. For those who like movies, that's how Tom Cruise comes in and breaks into the CIA's supercomputer center, which is completely controlled for intrusion detection, and he just comes in from the top. Okay, so again, a slide which I love because for me, the freedom and the fun element is very special, my friends. Each one of you has that mindset, and I don't need to tell you that. I think you've been listening that for the last 2.5 odd hours, and your degree of persistence will determine the success of your experimentation as well. Again, the perspiration, the experimentation part, and Homer Simpson will tell you that just get up, and you declared, get up and make that connection, make that solid permanence connection in your control plane or the brain, so that you start accepting the fact that yes, there is COVID out there, but there is not COVID inside your brains, if I may use the metaphor, right? It is not constraining you. Yes, there is COVID out there which you cannot see at a nanometer level, but those pathogens do not reside in your brains to stifle your thinking. So embracing acceptance comes the first step. And on top of acceptance, with a lot of compassion and with a lot of experimentation and mostly fun. I would say by fun, I mean not going around and nudging people around and just denigrating the whole impact of fun, but I would say having fun at it, like really enjoying. Oh, I failed. Get up and start doing it again. The post-it story, right? Not many people may know, this is even before I was born, but when I heard this story, I was mighty impressed because this was really considered innovation of the century, just before the smartphone arrived, by the way. So, so many people thought it'll never be, for 10 years, 3M, the company which launched this. And even from 1970, I think all the way till now, for the last 49, 8 odd years, we have been using this innovation, and it is just a paper with a sticky adhesive, and it still gets the job done. And this was considered a failure by the same company, the same inventor who invented it in the company for almost 12 years, from I think early 1960 all the way to late 1970. For various technical reasons, the adhesive is not proper, the size is not proper, people will never like it, and look at how much of purpose it has served. I doubt if there's any academician, any person, anyone who has not touched, used it to share that special note, right? Whatever it could be. And this is just the growth. I've just used an example of a light, the filament bulb growing. So as you perceive, there is no limit. You're unbounded really in your thoughts, and so in your idea. So the drumbeats of an idea whose time has come is phenomenal, my friends. And you can go all the way to filing your patent. You can go all the way from just innovating in your mind to the drawing board, to the testing lab, and then really calling it an innovation. And we have various people who are doing that practically every day. Okay, so that's my core message to you, that you can be an innovator, right? Last but not the least, once you have really crossed the stage 3 of testing, and there's a place and time comes when you have to crowdsource your idea. And I would like to share this short example of I think this was probably 6 years ago. when my company looked about telepresence, this is just video conferencing, and it's a great example, especially in this COVID times, right? And as Alok said, Cisco, or the company I work for or belong to, has this technology called WebEx, and it is supposed to be near human-like communication. So if I am waving my hands, if my eyelids are fluttering, it is not considered high-density video, but we have this solution called telepresence. As you can see in the screen, I think they are the second generation Bachchans. I'm just using this example from films because it kind of unites a lot of societal fabric here. So when there was this movie, the launch of this movie, or maybe the success of this movie, we had the stars in one screen. They were in Mumbai office. The director of a movie called Mani Ratnam was in Sydney. On the right-hand side of the screen, not visible, but partially, was the music composer, A.R. Rahman. And then we had at least 10 such screens in 10 cities to show the value of human beings sharing empathy and sharing success and rejoicing together. And this was the launch of our WebEx in a way, right? This kind of WebEx, which we are now using. And we just launched it, and we let these people use empathy and, if I may say so, human ambition and imagination, which is what Bollywood or the film industry in a way signifies, for good content at least, which is scarce, but anyway, jokes apart. I would say not just this people, but the entire crew of this movie became evangelizers of the idea. They actually said, finally we have finally we have conferencing, which is, even if I blink my eyelids, the person gets it. And that is the nearest you can get to, even if that person is 10,000 miles away. So Clarence, who has invented video conferencing standards largely worldwide all the way, and he's one of our fellows. He would also, it was his idea to do this in Hollywood and most of the film fraternities in the world. And you can see the expression on Ms. Bachchan, and everyone was just flabbergasted. And I was part of this in my Bangalore office, and I was flabbergasted as well. I was, to say the least, thunderstruck at how much technology can bring together. And it is at that moment in time that everyone in the room walked away with, oh my God, there are so many possibilities now. We can use this for education, for healthcare, for remote surgery, for everything, for every place in government friction where we are supposed and to take half a day leave and go back. Everything can be virtual. We never, of course, imagine mid of 2020 to be a virtual global world, but look at how much just using everything from Zoom, Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, and now Geo platforms. Everything is scaling on the virtual world. Okay. Some GPS primitives, just some codes. I really was inspired. And again, I'm just being a conduit. By no means are this my mantras. I have no stake or claim. I'm just quoting from inspired leadership, or I've paraphrased some of this all the way from, say, Nandan Nilekani, NRN, to all the way to Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, but just some GPS primitives, okay? And this is what I think Elon Musk says often, and I like that. I think it epitomizes what you say, right? I think Subhash and Dr. Uttara covered languaging. If we keep saying it, oh my God, there is scarcity. Oh my God, this is Murphy's law. We can never fix this. It forms some connection in your brain. So I think a nice way to language it better is, if anything can go wrong, I'll go and fix it, right? To hell with Murphy. Okay, just with due respect to Murphy, but you don't have to language and assume there's nothing you can do. You don't have to use that excuse and say, something has to go wrong every time. You can go and fix it. You can own that. Okay, I really like that. I also thought this was the credo of the passionate mind. This is what Nandan Nilekani says when someone told him about Aadhaar. And it was before 2014, obviously, till Aadhaar became a world success mantra. And you can go and read. There are probably more than 28 case studies across every MBA schools for the world's biggest digital identity platform. Okay, so he said no simply means begin again one level higher on your drawing board. If someone says no, 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 and you can go on and give numbers, but I think Aadhaar as a project, as a country project, has transcended numbers, transcended success metrics. It is just going to transform a society as a whole. And here's the biggest part: it was never about technology. It was always about including people together, and that's why it's a great example. This again is what Azim Premji also says this often, and I like that because that shows compassion and humanity. Azim Premji, founder and president of Wipro, now obviously retired, but his credo really is listen to everyone and not just the people with important titles. Okay, and that again, if you really connect straight away to your mindset, it is the mindset which is telling you, oh, just because the title, whatever the prefix is or whatever the suffix is, which says again a leader, a scientist, a chief, or whatever, I'm just giving an example, that means he or she probably is better and I should listen. So listen to everyone, right? Your, in a way, your entire community of whatever people, friends, researchers you live with are the best critics you can have. I particularly like this because this at the end is about being yourself, and it is being humble, but at the same time being polite and firm and saying, I would rather say this. I would rather say this in a meeting than have blind agreement. And this will be a defining characteristic actually, even as you step into your job. Just say a company of 4 people to 4 lakh people, it doesn't matter. But if you are someone who's telling the truth, people eventually get that you're being yourself. And I think that is being integral and authentic about your true self than just, yeah, even I think so, and doing disservice to what your mindset says. And I don't need to tell you this, you'll hear this probably on every hackathon you go, every hackathon organized even by the government of India. Just because no one else has done it doesn't mean, it doesn't have to be that way. So it simply means no one else is doing it. Has nobody thought about this solution for societal upliftment? If you go to the remotest villages in Rajasthan, you have the barefoot village, you have entire villages running on solar power. So sitting here and ideating, maybe I should not pursue solar or partially hybrid cells because it has no market, simply means you're not linking the thoughts. And innovation is always there, right? We are very close to, again, I'm using some emerging hyper trends because you need to look beyond just the technology. You need to look at what the technology drives, and that is societal outcomes or business outcomes. So, electrification, whether for the automobile industry or solarification for the whole industry as a whole, just giving an example, and even sustainability, and that is a big mindset by itself. Okay. This was my personal one, so I put it last. This is what my C professor told me, and he said, "Don't just say no. Don't say yeah, I got it, when you don't understand, because you are not building trust as a student to a professor. Did you get it? And you say, yeah, I understood it. So have the patience, have the courage to say, sir, I did not get it, and you will actually build a great bond of trust and empathy. Everyone empathizes with someone who is a natural, authentic, true person, right? You are declaring, I did not understand, sir, madam, please repeat it. And you actually build a bond with anyone who's trying to explain to you. So don't lose that connection. Don't lose that immense power of building trust and empathy. Okay. I think I'll just summarize all of this with this. If you're someone, you have to mean more to more. You have to go out of this locked mindset, which sometimes comes, and it's only natural if it doesn't come by now after, maybe 3.5 months of being in a virtual lockdown mode. So start with your 4 friends, whoever you may have, 2 friends, 8 friends, whoever is your trusted circle. Expand your circle. If you have certain ideas, if you have certain, even I would say, if certain challenges, share with your friends. You'll always discover trust and empathy. You'll always discover challenges and shapers for your idea. You'll always find someone who would say, that's interesting, Subodh. I went through the same thing. You know what? When I wake up, just like you feel this, I feel this, right? That's how empathy gets done, right? And I'm saying empathy, I'm not saying sympathy. Okay, there is a difference between that. And then again, whatever your idea could be, even if it is making the next new guitar or the next new whatever, for yourself, for your company, or for the society, you'll always have challengers, people who are in that space. And that is where your perspiration factor comes in, your testing, your relevance, and then link it to the industry, right? IEEE is a great platform for young professionals. I would say leverage that. Find your birds of a feather kind of a thing and say, who are the top 10 people who are in this space, the students community, and let me work with them. You'll always find standards just mean 100 people have walked that way, and there is always way number 101. So there's always room for the new standard, and that person could be you. Is what I really want to leave you with. And last, uh, start planning your career, start planning for your idea, start planning for that little business project you had. Most important, start planning for your life, because it's all about cultivating skill types and longevity beyond it. Okay, do not get so imagine the little Hanoi tower we used to have, or three different size discs. Your little focus or domain knowledge, let's just call it, I know how to speak Kannadiga, I know how to speak Tamil, I know how to speak Malayalam, right? That becomes your skill set. I know how to do Java, I know how to do Python, Puppet, Ansible. I do a little bit of PyTorch or Cafe. So that becomes your platform specific skills. Do not confuse that with, okay, I'm now God's gift to AI or ML. I don't need to do anything else. You have to expand to the green layer. See where that skill goes and fits in. Does it used in banking? Is it something which the next generation HDFC, SBI, ICICI banks can use? Is it something which can go in India stack? Just giving an example. And then the blue layer is what, and these are not in orders of importance, these are in orders of longevity. So that is when you start expressing yourself. That is when you start building your idea, testing, and failing for your idea. So I would encourage you to look at this, right? Because the industry is looking for this. Okay, they will often ask you things, just sharing from what we have seen across companies. I'm sure Subhash, Naveenji, Dilip, Alok, Dr. Uttara will concur as well. But industry looks at different things, whichever industry you belong to. But roughly, and this is not necessarily a complete list, but they never look at just marks, right? That is the thing which gets your foot inside the door. What happens once you are inside the room, or in the COVID times before the camera now, actually giving your interview, is some or all of the skills. Okay, and everything which you learn today is really about, in fact, your emotional intelligence would probably be top notch, right? Because that is going to funnel out and really help you for all the critical problem solving, thinking, the decision making. How are you for really imagining and perspiring for your idea? So I'll leave you for that, and yeah, very happy to hear what's on your mind. I'm sorry, Dr. Ravin, I think I went over by 2 minutes, but I just want to make sure this was relevant. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, Subodh. And I always been, no, it is a great aspiration, great highlights on, no, so suggestions like building your horizon and be truth to yourself, right? So these are something that no, we have to be honest and we have to adopt in our life, right? Whether it is a COVID time or natural or un-COVID time. So thank you very much for this enlightenment, and now I think we can open the floor for the for the participants. Anyone who would like to ask any question, and our the panelist will be happy to answer your query. So any question, and I think that our volunteers, if you have any question, kindly read it out and see if we have the answer for that.
Ekant, Aditya, Anusha, if you are checking the YouTube comments, could you please read out any questions if there are any? So all the panelists are available now to answer the question live. So kindly post your questions in the chat box and we will pick up and respond.
I think Subhash, I'll stop presenting in case someone needs to grab the ball. Is that okay, or you need to keep the? You want me to keep the
Yeah, I
slide?
think you can stop presenting. That should be okay.
Okay, all right.
You can see the faces in the screen.
Oh, good, good, wonderful.
Uttara, maybe you can turn on your camera as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe I will start with a small question that I don't know how many you will feel that it is true or not, but especially to Uttara madam. So she said that no, I mean, when you talk to somebody and other thing, keep always positive thinking and reply in that way. No, mind gets adjusted to that and get slowly trained. Now, for example, no, we are having the family and we talk and always we debate it, right? And finally, either you have to stop it at some point, though you are correct. So when you are correct and you have to stop that struggling and fighting, then at that time, what happens to our mind? The mind will get trained to that situation, and always you have to be like this. And I think it is always happening. Right, I don't know, but yes, it is. It is the situation. So how in that situation our mind gets and what is?
Uttara, you are on mute.
What you're saying really is that sometimes you do things that in your mind is either you're backing off, or you are
Yeah, exactly.
contextualizing your response to the situation, or you are putting one of your values in conflict with another value. So I think the first two you'll understand that sometimes we do something for another reason rather than saying I am right. Right. The second is we may do something because we are contextualizing what I say to my boss or what I say to my wife. I can't say to my boss. Right. So you contextualize. So you may back off. You may, as it says in the book, you may live to fight another day. So it's one of those. But sometimes we consciously also choose between two values. See, you may have two values. That is, you may value honesty, and you also value that I don't want to hurt people. So a friend comes to you and says, I've just bought this new dress, or I'm wearing this new shirt. What do I look like? Now, you can be honest and say, you're looking dreadful. What is this awful color you have chosen? Or you can say, yeah, you look okay, because you're choosing not to hurt the person over your honesty quotient, right? So it doesn't make for conflict inside your head, and because you know for what reason you are doing it. So you choose sometimes to withdraw from an argument or making your point repeatedly because even if you know you're right, that doesn't become a habit if you know the reason why you're doing it. Or you pick your context. That's how I would try and explain it to you. There may be other aspects to this, but in the short time, I think if you think about what, look at the picture of the situation in which you did that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think, yeah, I understood. Thank you very much.
Let me ask one question to Dr. Uttara. You talked about sensitivity to context.
Yes.
And sometimes it is very important, and we all understand. Even as mature people, sometimes we are not able to do it. So are there some tricks, tips even for us to, how do you bring that, if it goes out, how do you bring that sensitivity to context?
So basically, I think it's really a learned skill.
Sure.
So you need to first look at all the situations in which you perhaps didn't do it. And this is right from childhood, hopefully.
Sure.
Right? So some of it comes to you by wisdom. ऐसा नहीं करते ऐसे बोलते नहीं हैं, those kind of. So you are already internalizing some of those contextual situations. But as an adult, it is really to understand consequences. So what is the outcome of being out of context? And is it appropriate? So really, I don't know if Subhash remembers. I tell everybody that please get rid of words right and wrong, good and bad. Just use the word appropriate. Is it appropriate for me in this situation to say this? Is it appropriate for me to be like this in this environment? Would it be appropriate to speak? And if it is appropriate, then the consequences I have understood are okay. If I feel it's inappropriate, that means the consequences are not okay. So it requires that little time to, and this is again, we have to practice. We shouldn't be in default mode. That is what our emotional state is. These are our default.
Sure. So I think if we can understand the appropriateness and behave, that's great. But if not, then at least learn from the consequences and correct in the next time.
Handle the consequence. You can apologize. Sure. You can do certain things which take away the sting of that inappropriateness.
Sure.
Because
thank you. Great.
If I may share, one of the first things that Dr. Uttara taught us is how to not appear judgmental, right? So, and that gets reflected very much with the words that we use. So we predominantly have two types of brains, right? The thinking brain and the feeling brain, right? When you say, I think, you are passing a judgment. When you are, I feel, you are giving your perception rather than judgment, right? So there is a thin line between being right and being damn right. And many of the words that we use reflect whether you are showing the attitude of being damn right or you are saying you are right with the appropriate word. That it is like a Shannon channel theory. Your ambient noise is pretty much suppressed the moment you use the feeling words. So I thought I was
awesome.
So another way of putting it is express what you think, not as a fact, but as an opinion. Unless you know for a fact it's a fact, which is a scientific thing, right? Sun rises in the east. It's a fact. No one can dispute that. But if you think something as an opinion, that you don't know that this is a fact. This is what you think. Therefore, you express it as my opinion, not just always only about feeling, but even a thought can be expressed in a manner in which you can be challenged or asked. So that's your opinion, here my opinion. You open that up. But if you say it's a fact, you've just done a bad job, it's a fact. If you say, I could have done a little bit differently, because that's my opinion, you open the thing for a person to engage with you.
Great, thank you.
This is so insightful. Thank you. Thank you, Subhash and Dr. Uttara. Yeah.
Dear speakers, we are having a question in the chat window. And it is, how can we handle stress on during online classes and maintain a balanced mental state?
Who'll answer that?
Yeah, how can we handle stress during online classes and maintain a balanced mental state? Maybe.
Okay. So I think the first thing is that you need to be prepared for what you are going into the class for. In fact, I'd like to share something from other sides. Just see, we had this person calling us, in fact, on the COVID crisis helpline, who said, I am the teacher. Okay, she's taking the classes. She's the person doing the classes. And she said that she used to open her class asking the children or the students, how are you? And she never prepared herself to hear the kind of things the kids were experiencing. And so she was completely overwhelmed. And she said that at the end of it, I was unable to deliver what I was supposed to teach. Because I'm thinking, some child has not had the breakfast, some child has been shouted at by the parent and said, get out of the room, I'm online. Somebody, so they are telling what they are experiencing. Mommy and daddy are fighting, who is to wash, who is to clean. So the children are telling these things. She's a school teacher. So she spoke about that. I find at the end of about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, she's not delivered the lecture, which is only talking about it. So we ask sometimes, or we go into a class with some idea of something we are going to do. So we must be prepared. You must be prepared for what you are signing up for, right? What type of learning. So that could be one. So, and then think about what are the other stresses that you're experiencing. If you say that it is because too much time is happening, or you don't have an opportunity to ask questions, or you don't understand, you need to make a list of those and perhaps talk to the person or put it out way, or learn in a different environment if you find this kind of learning very, very stressful. So that what I'm saying is that and some people are better at learning like this, and some people are not so good. If you ask me, one of the biggest stresses is to be in front of a screen all the time. I'm so unused to it. I'm used to seeing people. And thank you to both for telling us that you can even tell the blink of an eye on Cisco WebEx, which I shall use. Because those are the kind of clues we are looking for when we're talking to people, right? When they're learning, or when you're helping in some other way. So, the medium itself may be a source of stress for some people. I don't know if the person who's asking the question is comfortable with the medium. So the medium itself is stressful, then you are adding to your blocks to learning. And there may be other things that are happening. Maybe you are already thinking about something else when you are sitting down. So mind is, as you said, not free and open to receive. We have to be in a position to receive when we go in to learn, because otherwise we won't be able to absorb what is happening. So we have to be prepared. So be prepared is not just expecting the material, but also our ability to hear and absorb. So I don't know if it answers it adequately, but
thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there is one more question in the chat box. Due to the current situation, everyone is glued to the laptop screens, and engineering students are under the stress of learning something new.
yes.
But the fear of future is building up stress and anxiety in them. How can a student overcome this? Thank you.
Yes. So somebody has just asked the same thing that I was saying. What is preventing the learning is the inability to detach from fear of the future and what is my learning, so one of the questions could be, is my learning going to be useful, and when is it going to translate in my becoming an engineer? And how do I cope with the fact that I might lose time, that I don't, and the uncertainty. So all these are just not about the delivery of the lecture. It is to do with what we bring to it. We are bringing our anxieties, we are bringing our fears, we are bringing our emotional level at a place where it is interfering with the way our mind will, our higher functions will, because we need our higher functions to work, to be able to learn. So all of these things they have to be worked on to say, one of the things is, of course, to practice some kind of relaxation. Learn a few relaxation techniques where breathing, all of these help us to reach a point where we can say, okay, now I can go and do this task. The second is to talk about it to somebody, because it's really important that we are able to express our distress. We cannot deal with our distress when it goes above a certain horizon or some critical thing where many things we can handle on our own. We can talk to ourselves and we can learn how to handle. But when it reaches a little bit beyond that, which is perhaps what this person is asking, and other things start to interfere, it's important to talk to someone. And talk to someone who will not say, oh, stop it, forget it, distract yourself. No, not that. Someone who accepts that this is a legitimate and a acceptable feeling in the circumstances. That is what, that is the power of sharing and supporting. Because once you do that, you can bring down the toxicity of that emotion. So this being able to say, I'm really scared, actually counterintuitively makes you feel less fearful. People think that if you say it, oh my God, it's going to make you feel worse. No, actually it does the exact opposite. It makes you feel better. If you can say, I really feel so angry, I can punch somebody, the anger comes down. It doesn't increase. This you have to understand by experiencing it. And that is the power of talking, listening, sharing, and being able to receive an empathetic ear. That is a person who does not judge. That is very helpful. And I'm not going into much, there may be more serious, scary things, but most people will respond to this. One is to be able to accept, normalize. See, it's normal in this situation to be uncertainty, giving us a feeling of what do I do? And the other thing also, please allow yourself to be, when you're younger, you take a little bit longer because you have never experienced this kind of uncertainty, which an older person, say your parent or an older brother or an older sister, may have experienced. And they'll tell you, yeah, this is okay for you. It is scary, but let's see what we can do. And the other trick, of course, is to be able to live in the moment. And that's another difficult one. But we encourage people to say, okay, right now, what's happening? Right now, are you distracted? Right now, are you unable to concentrate? Right now, are you unhappy? And if they can say yes or to all of them, then you say, let's do some relaxation. And there are studies on this as well. And they found, in fact, people have sent out, in fact, using messages, okay? They've sent messages to where through WhatsApps and this and that. And people have asked, answer 3 questions. What are you doing right now? Are you concentrating on what you're doing right now? Are you actually doing it? And the third is, are you happy or unhappy at this moment? And this was done in America, and 47% of the people who responded said they are not concentrating on the job, they're thinking of something else, and they are unhappy. And that's why this study which I referred to is called, the paper itself is called "A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind." So we need to come back when we go into a session or we are feeling unhappy, you need to say, no, I need to focus. Let me try and bring my focus back to what I have set my goal, which is to be online study. You can also say, I'll think about the future when I stop this class. When I go back, when I finish this class, I'll go back and then I will think about, and I'll talk about what the future holds for me. So we can focus by saying, let me be in the present now, and I will think, I'm not going to forget about it. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to. You say, I will think about it later. That's another small. Any other?
Thank you, ma'am. There is one more question. How can one be self-motivated continuously in every phase of life?
So we're coming back to a positive outlook, right? How do we make things look and make it that we internalize these understandings of how it is helpful? So these are, we have to, is really no magic pill or way in which we can tell ourselves all the time that everything's okay. So it's not about extremes. If sometimes we will be disappointed, we will feel demotivated, okay, but it shouldn't be your response to all aspects of your life. So that is what I'm saying. So there are people who do convert one negativity to all other aspects. We have to work to challenge that. So what we are doing when we are rethinking or repositioning is to challenge our own dialogue. So with self-awareness, you hear yourself. You hear yourself and say, oh God, this is not working. Nothing is working in my life. So you have to say, is that true? Is nothing working in my life? You have to have this dialogue inside. You have to set up the counter. And if you can't do it, you have to ask other people to challenge you and set up the counter for you. Always, if you're trying to address something, it's always helpful if you have somebody around you who says, what the heck, what are you saying? Let's talk about it again. So you need to do it yourself, of course, and it's also helpful if somebody challenges you. Because then, so whether it's empathy, whether it is listening, whether it is challenging your own way in which you're perceiving the world, you can work on yourself and you can take help. So somebody challenges and says, yeah, okay, I understand you're not going out and buying groceries, or you're not going to the shops and not visiting the mall. But does that mean you are not good at studying? Does it mean you're not good at cleaning the house? Does it mean that, you just don't allow people to universalize. So you do it yourself or help people to do it. So when you say, how can I use this, motivate myself in everything? Some things you may not be motivated to do. That's okay. But does it mean that you don't get motivated? Just because you can't be motivated for everything doesn't mean you don't get motivated for anything. So these are the two extremes you should avoid. So you shouldn't set yourself, I should be motivated for everything. Then you're setting yourself up for failure straight away. Then you say, I can't achieve it. So no, I'm no good. So if I'm no good, then I'm a loser. Then if I'm a loser, I will get a job. This is another thing that is one of our negative thoughts, which is that we will go from 0 to 100 very quickly. You catastrophize. That is, you take it as a catastrophe. And these are some of the things we learn, so we have to unlearn. So you will have some father who will say he'll come back with one son or daughter will come with a report card saying 60 marks in maths. Oh, you will never make it in your life. You become a somebody who becomes chowkidar outside. You see, so you take 1 mark thing and you make that person's life 0 10 years from now. So we learn some of these things. So we should challenge them. Just because I didn't succeed in this one little thing, I didn't attend class and I didn't understand this, I felt irritated by the online class, doesn't mean you'll never learn and you not manage to go forward. So these are just some of the things we do. I don't want to go take up too much time.
Oh, that's really great, very great. Yeah, and anybody else would like to share any thought?
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yes. Yes. The question is, all the kids and the students, younger students of school, have started getting adapted to the online method of teaching. Since they're using their laptops and phones a lot right now, it'll be difficult for them to get out of this zone after the pandemic is all over. It's a huge pressure on all the kids. So how would they be able to come out of this thing which they're going under right now?
That's a very what shall I say, an expected thing that we are likely to see, because children are using technology and the screens for all their activities. So they're using it for, obviously, for learning if they have online classes, for entertainment, to be in touch with their friends, for entertainment, and not just seeing movies or but playing games or whatever it is. They are using this to substitute for many of our expected social functions as well as learning environments. So I think one of the things is to substitute some of these with non-technology related. So what we cannot substitute necessarily all their classes, because they would have to attend a certain number, but we can substitute some of the others. Substitute meaning we can, for instance, entertainment. So family getting together, playing some games, doing some activity which is creative, gardening, painting, that keeps them engaged, but away from the screen. The third, and for this, parents have to try quite hard, because normally parents want to sit down in front of the screen. So, and so their kids are doing their own watching. So that is one. And the other is to limit some of these activities. So if you're chatting with your friends, you limit it. You don't say that you'll be WhatsApping in 2 o'clock in the morning, and what some of the children are doing. They're doing it even in non-COVID times, by the way. Please don't think that COVID only has brought this on. It hasn't. So it's just reorganizing the time spent together with the people available and replacing some of the needs of a child with non-digital or non-screen based activity. And we will have to anticipate that things will be difficult when things get back to more people, more going back to school and all that. That children will find it a little difficult, but children are very adaptable. And if they see benefit in the other activity, they'll take it up quite happily. But we have to be sort of innovators and drivers of this. We can't expect them to do it, because they take the easy way out, and we must expect that.
Oh, that's a great, very, very good. Yeah.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yeah, maybe last. Yeah.
Is it going to somebody else?
Aditya, go ahead and read out the question.
Yeah.
books are getting replaced by online courses these days. What panelists would like to say, do books still have edge over online courses, or both hand in hand together we should use for knowledge?
If learning is outcome, use anything to learn. That's my
Yeah,
answer.
absolutely.
You want to learn, right? So learn.
Yeah. If
Whatever
I may just,
knowledge you whether it's from a book or from your teacher or from your mentor or from your child or from the online, just learn.
yeah, if I may just compliment, right? Just what Dr. Uttara said, I think she said it very nicely. I hope all of you got it. The medium, it's just a medium. If you like the sound of pages flipping, read a book. If you like eye blinking on video conferencing and you still like to stare at screen, look. Either way, the outcome was learning and not the medium, right? And just so it inspires you, I'm sure all of you have uncles and aunties and grannies who are now on Zoom and WebEx and everything. So if you ask me, if you can unlearn and learn, that's even more better. Like you're unlearning something and learning something better. So go for it.
Dilip is asking a question. I want to answer this question.
Oh, sure.
So Dilip's question is, when do you think that we can have an AI-based Dr. Uttara chatbot in the cloud for everyone to get help?
I volunteer for building that. I'm so mesmerized.
So it is up to you. You have to really create a digital twin of Dr. Uttara's brain, and whenever you feel 100 years, perhaps, then you will have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never felt so appreciated in my life.
No, honestly, this is so touching. This is so nice. I like the way you put it, Dilip.
Yeah, I think that was the last question.
Yeah, I think so. So, Dr. Alok, any remarks?
No, I think what I picked up, many important points, and it will be a long list, but I think what in summary we got is it is okay to have this feeling, express your emotions. There is nothing wrong. And in this difficult time, it's even more so. So please express your emotions. But at the same time, what is important to note is that the toxicity of emotions, she talked about that. That's where we have to work on so that the toxicity part doesn't enter the body, and we must vent it out. And whether it is a meditation, whether it is talking to someone, whether it is, social media, find your ways, mentors, but the toxicity should not get accumulated, and we need to find out how to get rid of that. And I think the other important point she mentioned is the compartmentalization of issues. Because, if you are going to class and if your mindset is not there and you are worries about future, so it's not going to work. So therefore, you need to take a bit more time and say, yes, you are concerned about jobs or other things. And it's again perfectly fine because that's a reality. It's okay to acknowledge. But this is not the time. If I'm entering the class, I prepare myself to learn more, because that will help me to find jobs. So it should be a motivation. The trigger should come from there and say, yes, that's a concern. But that's exactly is the reason why I'm going to get to the class and learn more, learn relevant things. And after the class, I'm going to practice it and not allow mind to wander around. And as she told very nicely, the wandering mind, our mind is lazy and it wanders around, and that's an ineffective way to deal with ourselves. So we have a lot of success and glories and achievements and our goals anchored there, as I said in the beginning. And I think these are wonderful learnings that we had today. And if we apply, I'm sure young, adult, whichever age, we all would benefit from it. Thank you. Thank you from my side.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you for your time. I know so many good things even we could learn, and no, we have not been practicing, but doing all this nuisance that we could do. But I think a lot of learning we have from all you experts and our experience. So thanks a lot. Maybe Dr. Dilip has come. Anything you have to say?
Oh, no, nothing. I just want to say thank you. It was great listening. Amazing.
Yeah.
We are so engrossed in just technology that, we never think about all the other aspects to life. So thank you for bringing all those perspectives. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So
Thank you,
thank
Dr.
you
Uttara.
all, and thank Anusha, Prajwal, and Ikant, and volunteers. So thank you very much, and thanks a lot. Have a good day. We will again meet, and remember next Saturday again we have a very good workshop. I mean, 2-hour session on patent filing and so on. So you will get information about that. So with this, thanks a lot, and especially thank you, madam, for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mitra. Thanks, Vash. Thanks, both. Thanks, Dr. Luke.
Thank you. Thank you all, team.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye. Have a good
Thank you,
day.
Naveenji. Thanks.
Special thank you to Subhash because he convinced me to do this.
Yeah.
No, I'm really grateful to you, Dr. Uttara. So I have been very fortunate and to be your student, and I am so happy that you agreed.
More of the work that I have. You did the learning has to be from your side. Much more hard work. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.